Money management is something that a lot of people learn through trial and error, and even when parents do a good job with sitting down their teenagers and teaching them money lessons, a lot of times they don't cover every aspect of personal finance, which means that a lot of young adults learn about money through experience. Like a lot of people, I made quite a few money mistakes in my early days, probably starting back as early as 15, and even though I feel that I got on a right path fairly early in life, even when I think back to my 20s or 30s, there are still a lot of things that I would do differently if given the opportunity. So in today's video, we are going to look at 7 of my biggest financial mistakes and regrets, and I'm not going to go in exact order. However, I am going to try and start with those mistakes that I made earlier in life and end with those that I've made more recently. The first mistake that I made as a young adult is something that I feel a lot of people might relate to, and that's applying for too many credit cards. To give you a little backstory, I started college in 1996 during a time when many credit card companies were heavily advertising to college students. So as you walked around campus, every corner, you could not help but find a stack of credit card applications. Getting credit at that age and that time was so easy, and I applied for my first credit card, which was a Discover, got approved, got the card within probably a month. It was so easy that I went and I applied for 2 more credit cards, which I also got. And when you think about somebody in their late teens, early 20s with 3 major credit cards in their wallet, I probably don't have to tell you what happened. Within the first year of getting my first credit card, it was already maxed out, and the other 2 cards that I received also had high balances. Now, the one thing that really saved me was because these were student credit cards and I was still new to credit, my credit limits were pretty low. I think they were only like $500 and $750 or something like that. So I didn't get way in over my head. But considering that I was only working very, very part-time at the time, once the balances started to accumulate, it became very difficult to pay them off. And you'd think that that experience would have helped me see the path that I was going down and I would chill with the credit cards, but no. Then I went and got on this retail card kick, and I applied for an Express credit card. I got a Victoria's Secrets credit card. Even when I was engaged, I put my husband's wedding ring on a retail card for a jewelry store. Now, one thing I will say that I am proud of is that I did keep these accounts in good standing. I never paid a bill late, so my credit, it was okay. But at the same time, the balances, they were high. It was difficult to pay them off. And to be honest with you, paying them off wasn't really even on my radar at that point, because I thought, hey, as long as I'm paying my minimums, as long as the credit card companies are happy, then I'm good. And to be honest with you, I didn't even get serious about paying off my debt until a few years later when I started writing personal finance articles. It was at that point that things became very clear, and it was like a light bulb went off in my head. The second mistake I made as a young adult was loaning out my credit card. And to be honest, it wasn't so much the act of this person borrowing my credit card that I regret, although I do caution against this. It was more so the fact that I really didn't set any ground rules or any expectations. I basically put the card in their hand, didn't ask any questions, and I wasn't really monitoring the card's activity. Basically, 20 years ago, my boyfriend at the time, who is now my husband, was in between jobs, and I allowed him to use my credit card. Now, in my mind, I thought he was only going to use the credit card to maybe get gas or maybe pick up a few inexpensive items here and there. And yes, he did those things and then some. If I remember correctly, he went out to eat, he went shopping, he bought a video game, and there was some other charges on the card that I did not expect. Now, fortunately, everything turned out okay for me. He paid off every cent that he put on that card really quickly, and I did not have to come out of pocket for anything. However, that situation, it taught me a valuable lesson at a young age, because when I think about worst case scenario, that situation, it could have turned out really bad. He could have ringed up a huge credit card balance, which I could have ended up having to pay, and if I couldn't pay the balance, it could have hurt my credit score. A lot of stuff could have happened. Thankfully, none of it did, and from that moment, I just learned always to stay in control of your own credit. Another mistake that I made as a young adult was not reading the fine print when signing up for trial offers, and this goes all the way back to when I was 15 years old and I signed up for Columbia House. Can't remember the details, but I think it was something like you can get 8 CDs for a penny and then you had to buy other CDs at regular price. Well, that was okay. You know, I was okay buying the CDs at regular price, but what I did not realize, because I didn't read the fine print, was that you had to buy these CDs within a certain amount of time. Not only that, but the price of the CDs were highly inflated. And on top of that, there was also like a CD of the month, which the company would send and you would have to pay for. If you didn't want the CD, I think you had to mail back a card by a certain time, which I didn't do. So I ended up having all this music that I didn't want and I was getting charged for it, and they were sending me all these letters, and it just turned into a big mess. Now you'd think that my 15-year-old self would have learned a valuable lesson, but no. A few years later, after I get my first credit card, I then get a phone call from a magazine company that's partnering with my credit card company, and basically they offered me this deal where I can get 3 different magazine subscriptions on a trial for about 3 or 4 months. I can't remember all the details, and you know, I agree. Now on the phone they say a free trial, so I'm like, sure, I'll get some magazine subscriptions for a few months, no big deal. Well, being young and not asking any questions, what I didn't know is that by signing up for this free trial, I was unknowingly giving the company permission to charge my credit card at the end of the trial for the magazine subscriptions for the next year. And that is exactly what they did. I still remember opening up my credit card statement and seeing that charge for over $100 for magazines. And I called my credit card company to complain, but there wasn't anything they could do, because by agreeing, I had actually locked myself into a year contract. Another mistake I made as a young adult was not buying a house sooner. When we got married in 2001, home prices in our area, let me tell you, it was super cheap to live here. And looking back, I kick myself almost every week that we did not purchase sooner. Because when I think about the situation we were in at that time, I do feel that we were in a position to buy. During that time, you know, you could get condos, townhouses for about $60,000, $70,000, and $80,000, and these were decent places to live. But for some reason, buying, it just wasn't on our radar. I guess just being young, we felt that we had plenty of time and we would just, you know, we'll do it later on. One thing we did not expect was for home values in our area to nearly double over like a 1.5 to 2 year period. And it got to the point where we were like, okay, we need to buy something ASAP or we're going to get priced out of the market. And because we were in such a rush to get something, we ended up settling on a house that, you know, it wasn't a bad house, but it definitely wasn't my first choice. And just to give you an idea how quickly prices in our area jumped, you know, we paid $165,000 for our first house back in 2006. A year and a half prior, I believe, the person who we bought the house from had purchased it for only $92,000. So that just gives you an idea of why we were kicking ourselves, because everything was just insane. So we ended up buying a house that was a little older and needed some work, which we did put the work into it and we made it our own. But looking back, I still wish that we would have purchased sooner, because I do feel that we could have gotten a lot more for our money. Another mistake I made young was putting off repaying my student loan. And if you don't know much about how student loans work, typically repayment will start about 6 months after finishing school. Now, a lot of people do start repaying at this time. However, many lenders will also give you the option to request forbearance, where basically for about 6 months to a year, you don't have to make a payment. And at the end of the forbearance period, you can either start repaying at that point or you can request another forbearance. Now, the first year that I graduated from college, you know, I really wasn't in a position to start repaying my student loan because I was trying to work towards other financial goals at that point. So I wanted to put it off. I applied for the forbearance. Well, the mistake I made was that after that first 12-month period, instead of just going ahead and starting my first payment, I requested another forbearance, and I continued to request these for about 4 years. So even though I graduated college in 2001, I did not make my first loan payment until 2005. And even at that point, the monthly payments were still really low and I could afford to pay more, but I didn't. They wanted $50 a month, and that was exactly what I gave them without thinking twice. But what my young mind failed to take into consideration was that interest would continue to accrue throughout that 4-year period. And by making those super low payments, I was actually extending the length of my term and also the amount of interest that I would pay over the life of the loan. And again, it wasn't until I started really writing personal finance articles and I had a few assignments about student loans that everything really started to make sense and click in my mind. And from that point, I was like, okay, I need to do something. I need to increase what I'm paying. I need to catch up a little bit. And I did all of those things. But even with those efforts, I still ended up paying a lot more for my student loans than I had to. Another mistake I made was having a late start when it came to retirement planning. Now, I do feel that it is so important to start saving for retirement at an early age, even if you're in your early 20s and even if you can only contribute 1% of your income. I only wish I had taken this advice when I was younger. At that point in my life, I think I made the mistake of prioritizing other financial goals over saving for retirement. And because I was young, in my mind, I was like, I have plenty of time to start saving, but at this moment, I want to focus on paying off debt. I want to focus on saving money for a down payment for a house. And even though those were good goals, I do feel that I should have put retirement in there at some point, even if I was only able to save $50 a month or $100 a month. Even though I knew how important it was to save for retirement, because it wasn't a habit, once I had hit other financial goals, retirement planning, it still remained on the back burner or in the back of my head, and I just never made it a priority, and I just kept putting it off. So because of my late start, I have to play catch up, which I am doing, and I do have a plan in place that I feel will work, but at the same time, I can't help but think of how far I would have been had I started saving maybe in my early 20s. Another mistake I made was not making estimated tax payments for many, many years. Me and my husband are both self-employed, so as a result, we have to set aside money for taxes every month and then pay the IRS in a lump sum. And for many years, that's what we have done. Now, we knew that we were supposed to make estimated tax payments to the federal government and the state government, but we didn't. And at the end of the year, when we would do our taxes, our tax preparer would also tack on a fee for not making the estimated payments. And, we paid the fee, didn't really think anything about it. And because we set aside 30% of our income, but we really only end up paying about 25% in taxes, there was always a surplus in our account which covered the fee, so we never really gave it a second thought. But over the years, as our income has increased, so has that fee. And one year we were just thumbing through our return, just checking out everything to make sure everything was accurate, and we saw how much we had to pay for not making estimated tax payments. And we both kind of looked at each other and was like, okay, why are we just giving away our money? I think it was just a thing of we just didn't want to think about taxes throughout the year other than putting money aside to pay it. But we were like, okay, this is ridiculous. We have the cash in the bank, just make the estimated tax payments, don't pay the penalty, and we're able to keep some of our cash. So there you have it. Those are some of my biggest financial regrets that I have made over the years, starting as a teenager all the way up until my 30s. Thank you for watching this video. I really hope that you enjoyed it. And if you did, please give me a thumbs up. Also on my channel, we talk a lot about money management, mostly how you can save money, but also how you can improve your entire financial picture. So if you like videos like this and you want to see more, do me a favor and hit the subscribe button below. I post every weekend and sometimes during the week. So thank you again for watching, and I'll see you next time.